Well, we have a small bit of a rabbit dilemma, and essentially it's to do with heat in the month of May, something that we don't normally experience until kind of July, August. Today we've got a little bit of an issue. We've got to move some rabbits kind of ASAP because, as you can see behind me, they're in the garden. Now the garden is kind of a semi-full sun scenario. Normally by this time of the year it's cool enough, but they're still quite happy in there. And we actually, as you can see, have a breeze today. So it's not horrible out. However, it is significantly warmer than it normally would be this time of year. We are 28 degrees already, and it's like what, 10 o'clock in the morning, which is much more typical of sort of July through August weather for us. So today is kind of one of those cases where, I'm going to say it this way, when weather patterns change slightly, they can have significant impacts on your livestock and your gardening and your homesteading in general, because we shouldn't be having quite this warmer temperatures this time of year. So here are the rabbits, and as you can see they still have shade, and as I said earlier, it's actually breezy today, so this isn't horrible. But we unfortunately had a bit of a issue where one of the litters of babies didn't make it. They basically overheated, and this is not something that we would typically worry about in May. This is usually like the prime time for breeding rabbits, but what seems to be becoming the norm, at least where we are, is unseasonably warm temperatures. I think yesterday broke a record for Ontario, if I'm not mistaken.
Highest since 2004.
Something like that, yeah. I think it was it 30 degrees or 31 degrees?
31 degrees, yeah.
Lots to think about there when planning endeavors.
Typically, come end of June, that's when we start being concerned about this situation, and we usually would not breed our rabbits to have little babies at that time. We usually like to have all the babies born and out of nest boxes before the real heat of the summer comes and you have to worry about bugs and sickness and all that. So this is kind of coming as a bit of a hit, because if we can't breed now, when can we breed?
So as you can see over there, where we're going to move the rabbits, and we already started this, is an area of deep shade. So a simple tool that's handy to have for moving at least our hutch design is a fridge cart, and we'll show you how this makes it a lot easier even with the rabbits in the cage. Well, as you can see behind me, the rabbit village has been moved. This is something that we were planning to do and we do every year, and it's one of the reasons for the size of the rabbit hutches that they are, because the dilemma here where we live is, unless we build or have a dedicated indoor rabbit space, we are guaranteed to get hot weather and cold weather and everything in between. So there's a couple take-home messages on this video. A big one, I think, is you can argue, discuss, debate climate change, but if you're farming, you will start farming, homesteading, raising animals, growing a garden. You will start to notice those little changes, and you may not see them at the highest absolute temperature or the lowest absolute temperature. Realistically, like our middle of winter has actually been fairly mild, but where you see it is the shoulder seasons, and we are May. May is generally a nice month, but it's usually not this warm. I'll take you over to the gardens actually momentarily, because I can show you another issue we're having with brassicas. Realistically, we haven't been able to plant them out until fairly recently. I think we planted a few out at the beginning of, end of April, which for Ontario, that's actually pretty early. But now that we're into more July, August type weather, that's essentially making it difficult at best to grow some of those. So yeah, if anybody really wants to discuss that debate, I think start growing some of your own food and start tracking year to year when you plant things, when your rabbit kits are born, all those things, and you'll start to notice when those shoulder seasons change.
One thing I'm noticing, even in the short time that they've been back here, is they're more content. They're actually eating. I put in their food this morning. Nobody even went to touch it. That was a sign that we knew the heat had hit them, and hit them hard. I hadn't at that point realized we'd lost a litter of babies to the heat, but definitely I'm glad we've gotten them moved. And like I say, they're nibbling on their pellets today, and they'll get some fresh greens later once they're cooled off.
So as if homesteading wasn't difficult enough, you can see here, it's pretty dry. Now, I know hypothetically we probably should have some cover on this, but still, it's May, and we are getting conditions that you would expect in July. But even coming over here, where we have actually mulched everything, these went out, I think it was 2 weeks ago, which realistically should be optimal time for planting brassicas. And they're doing okay, but they're struggling. And they get partial shade, and they're mulched so that there's some water retention under there, etc. That being said, we have been watering these a bit, but as you can see on the peas, another cold season crop. Essentially, the best way I can put it is it's this difficulty between, we should in Ontario normally get a bit of time to grow some of these colder season things that like it cooler, but it's seeming more and more like in the springtime at least these may be off the menu to a degree, or not as productive as we would like them to be. So even though we've kind of averted any more crises on this, it brings up a discussion that we have time and time again, not just about the rabbits, but about everything. In some ways, we don't live in a very extreme climate because we actually have a lot of fairly nice days, but when those shoulder seasons are unpredictable, it can cause issues. So for example, with the rabbits, most people keep rabbits because rabbits can hypothetically be bred multiple times in a year. Well, because we keep them outside, I mean, they do really well in the winter months, but they won't breed because they're on a natural cycle. And there are things you can do, such as artificially light them, etc., or keep them inside. But there's the big dilemma, because if we keep them outdoors like this, I'm not even going to say this is the best way to do it. There's thoughts about colonies, etc., and we have some issues there too, but it gets to this point where you've got to decide if something's working or not. And this is not really any fault of the rabbits. It's a case of, are the rabbits really well adapted for the weather patterns that are going to be thrown at them? i.e., if they won't breed in the winter months without supplementary cover and lighting, or artificial lighting and cover, then you're lucky to get them to breed sort of end of February. If by now the temperatures get so hot, we're actually curious whether some of our bucks will breed again. If they won't, because the temperatures are already that high, then we're not going to get the production out of them that we kind of need, and we don't push our rabbits. So you get stuck in a discussion of, do you have to do it very intensively, i.e. allocate some barn space or build a special building for them to keep it going, and then does it actually make sense from a resource perspective to do that? Because even if we go the colony aspect and we do outdoor colony pens, it's going to sound bad, but will the return on the investment be worth it versus what we could use for the sheep? The fencing's more difficult, the risk of predators is more difficult, the risk of diseases is more of an issue than it is with the sheep. So suddenly it becomes a question of, as much as we like the rabbits, and we come to this every year, this is another reminder, is, are they the best fit for our situation? I won't lie, it's kind of starting to feel like there's nothing that really fits it, because you have to have something that is extremely cold tolerant, extremely heat resistant, potentially able to exist off of nothing, because the other downside to this is if we don't get rain, which we normally get in May, and we don't get cooler temperatures, there may not be pasture, whether it was rabbits, sheep, cows, doesn't matter what it is. And that's another consideration for sure to think about. So I'll finish this one in the greenhouse, which is really warm today. We've got all the windows and the door open kind of full so that this doesn't get overheated. We have tomato starts and stuff out here now. They're going to love the heat, but I don't know. It's just one of those things. You think you're doing amazing, and then in a very, very short period of time, things can be thrown at you that you've got to deal with, and some of them there's no real practical way to deal with it. Now in the garden front, we're going to obviously have more water collection. We've been using that quite extensively actually, which is awesome. But it's just more food for thought. We'll have some more discussions on the rabbits for sure, and other people's thoughts and experiences on it, because we know that they can be kept in more climate-controlled buildings. But does that defeat the purpose of trying to do things in a, I'm going to say, quote-unquote, simpler manner? That's the million-dollar question. So stay tuned. We don't have an answer right now, but for the short term, our rabbits are doing better, and we're going to leave it at that.